Rich Varney here. Welcome to another edition of the Rich Varney Show podcast. Have you ever considered or wondered what it would be like to buy real estate in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico? Today we'll be chatting with Rebecca Dawson. Rebecca shares with us right at the beginning of the podcast why her and her husband decided to come to Mexico. Then we talk more about the real estate market in San Miguel de Allende, how it's been shifting over the past couple of years and how that has been affecting the prices. She also shares some advice for newcomers to the area and some of her predictions on how the market is going to react to the whole pandemic of the COVID-19. Stay tuned, guys. The podcast is on its way. Welcome to another podcast, guys. I am so excited.
Hello, Rich. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here tonight. We're going to have a good time. We've been friends on Facebook and Instagram for, over a year now, and now we finally get to meet tonight. It's very fun.
Rebecca has been living in Mexico since 2016 and recently partnered up with First International Realty in San Miguel de Allende. If you don't know, guys, San Miguel de Allende is a very, very popular destination for Americans, Canadians and foreigners to go and retire to. Probably a lot of baby boomers, Mexican baby boomers are retiring, I would say, in San Miguel de Allende. It's a very colonial town. I've never visited, but I've heard some wonderful things about, and I'm certainly going to ask you through this podcast what it's been like for you living there. Let me start right at the beginning, if I may. What made you want to come to Mexico?
We have always enjoyed traveling, and we've been to numerous continents, many countries, many states in the U.S., and it had always been a dream of ours to retire abroad, at least, if not full-time, at least with a vacation home that we could get to with great regularity. And we had done extensive research on Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, and Mexico. And I was on the verge of buying airplane tickets to Costa Rica when I looked at my husband and I said, how are we going to get the dog to Costa Rica in the plane? Because she's too big to carry on board with us. And so he said, well, you better start looking at Mexico then. So I went back to San Miguel. That was kind of our favorite spot in Mexico. I'd done a lot of research on it online and reading books. And so we bought our airplane tickets, and we had just sold a ranch in West Texas that we had owned, and we had some money to invest, and we wanted to, this was just before the 2016 election. We weren't quite sure, how that was going to turn out and what was going to happen to real estate in the States. And so we thought, well, now's a good time. Let's just invest abroad. If we get down there and we like it, let's put some money in Mexico. And we got to San Miguel, and we had an offer on a house within 48 hours. It took us it was that fast.
Really?
Yeah. So we made the decision really quickly, but we went with that idea of investing money. And we have seen a really good investment on our property there up until just this recent real dip, in the market with the coronavirus. We were seeing an annual appreciation rate of 12% on our home.
I think that's actually been in line with Ajijic as well. Definitely, yeah, and probably Guadalajara. I mean, maybe it's an overall trend in Mexico over the past, I always say in the past 10 years, there's definitely been an up curve in Mexico, particularly on prices of land.
I think as the baby boomers continue to retire in droves and they realize, number one, how beautiful Mexico is, number two, how gracious the Mexican people are to have as neighbors. And then the climate and the culture, the community, the cultural arts scene is also vivid and vibrant in Mexico. It's just a great place to retire to. And the American dollar goes exceedingly further in Mexico than it does in the States nowadays, So particularly with the peso continuing to weaken against the dollar, it's just a great time to buy right now in Mexico.
I think Mexico is one of these it's still a kind of a hidden gem in this weird sense that people either look at Mexico and they go, yeah, drug wars and it's unsafe, or they go, yeah, beautiful beaches, we go to Cancun. And there's very little in between that that people talk about.
You know, we've been down there for 4 years now, off and on. We come back to Texas twice a year to pay taxes and to spend the holidays at Christmas with here. And people still ask us, oh gosh, you know, how cool it must be to be at the beach, you know, all year long. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. We're not at the beach. We're in the mountains. You know, it is funny, but you're right. That stereotype of the beaches of Mexico there's so much more to the country than just beach areas. San Miguel is definitely a colonial city, and the center of the town is the Centro Histórico, which is the part everybody really enjoys and visits when they come. And the city has grown. There's urban areas around it as well. You know, you could go to a department store. The local pool is up at the mall, and there's, you know, fried chicken to go places that you can pick up, you know, take home supper, you know, just like you do anywhere. And so there's the modern aspect, but the old cobblestone streets and the old colonial structures dating back to the 16th and 17th centuries are just beautiful.
When you go back to San Miguel, does it feel like you're going home now?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. We certainly feel like we know our way around the city. We've been very blessed to have been able to plug into a really wonderful church situation there. We've got good friends and some dinner clubs and book clubs and other organizations that we participate in, you know, charity organizations that we here. So I think our network and circle of friends is probably richer in San Miguel than it is in the little town that I spent my whole life growing up in. Everybody who's there, even though we've only known them maybe 4 years or less, we've all gone through the same crucible experience of getting there and finding our way to San Miguel. And there's a richness there in that friendship because those people have all traveled, they've all been successful in careers, they found their way to this little beautiful gem of a city in the mountains of Mexico because it spoke to their heart in the same way that it spoke to our hearts. So there's a certain camaraderie, I think, that's instantaneous as an expat living in Mexico.
I think people get another wind. They come to Mexico and it's like they find another cog. They find another, like, a gear to live in.
Exactly. And it's a calmer gear. You know, there's a slower pace of life. There's a little less stress. You know, the mañana spirit is so strong in Mexico that you really can't afford to get in a hurry. You'll just give yourself an ulcer. Yeah. We have a beautiful physical home and we love our neighborhood and we've got good friends there that we miss. We stay in touch all the time on Facebook and emails back and forth and phone calls. So, are
you in the town center? Do you have a place in the town center of
We thought we wanted to buy there. Our original plan was to buy something and rent it when we weren't there. However, when we first went to visit, I had booked a hotel room in the Centro Histórico, and it was quite noisy, and we're kind of quiet people, and we need our 8 hours of sleep, and so it didn't take us long to figure out that, oops, we don't really think we want to live in the main area. So we bought out a little bit on the south side of town, very close to the major supermarket in the city. And it's real easy access for us to get to the Centro Histórico district for business purposes. So we park our car at the supermarket and we take a cab into town and we're there in like 10 to 12 minutes. So, you know, it's no big deal. So it works out fine. Yeah. And that way we have our peace and quiet on the edge of the city, but easy access to the heart of the city.
So let me ask you about San Miguel, because we're in the conversation about San Miguel de Allende. Who are the clients that you see coming? What is the, if you could say, because I'm sure every area has its kind of specific client or clientele. There's probably a handful of different types of clientele that we see in Ajijic, you know. And Do you think San Miguel has the same?
I read about this when I was doing my research about San Miguel, and we looked at Ajijic area. And I have a friend that lives in that area from Texas, but I think it's got the reputation of being more a community. The expat community has the reputation of having a very strong ex-military presence, retired military personnel from the States. Is that correct? Have you found that to be true? Is that the case or not?
Personally, I haven't found that. I haven't really. I mean, I have to say, I personally haven't worked with many clients, or if any. Oh, I think I've got one client who, yeah, he was in the military, but that's, yeah, I don't meet a lot of clients from that background.
The expat community in San Miguel was largely founded on the efforts of a gentleman named Sterling Dickinson, who came to San Miguel as an American GI after World War II, when the U.S. government said that the American GIs could use the GI Bill for their college educations anywhere in the world. It did not have to be at a college or a university in the United States. And so Sterling wanted to study art, so he came to San Miguel to study art, and he founded, this movement towards artists coming to San Miguel to study, and that was really what started the expat community in San Miguel. And so because of that background, there's such a wonderful artistic environment, lots of concerts, lots of art galleries, lots of live theater, lots of live dance concerts and events, chamber music festival, jazz music festival. I mean, there's just this really rich cultural environment there that I think is a draw for expats who like that kind of thing. And there's always something to do in San Miguel. There's never a dull moment. You can get the weekly paper that comes out on Fridays, and there's like 10 or 12 events every day that you can go to if you're interested in that kind of a thing. You can have your pick. So I think that might be a little bit different than where you are from what I've read about Ajijic. I have no firsthand experience. Initially to San Miguel was that those cultural offerings.
We have cultural events in Ajijic and in Chapala, but maybe you just have it sounds like there's more going on where you are. I mean, there's plenty to do here, and I think if people want any kind of more, should we say, if they want to see some grand ballet or something, or orchestra, we do have stuff coming in, from time to time. But people, I think, tend to go to Guadalajara and the theater, some of the main theaters in Guadalajara, to see more of the international standard of entertainment, But we do have some, saying that, we do have some very, very good musicians in town, and there's bands going on, but it sounds like maybe it's a bit more organized in San Miguel de Allende.
I'm thinking of the Chamber Music Festival and the opera program in San Miguel. There's two cultural events in the local theater playhouse. They're all organized and run by boards of directors that are all expats. I think the funding and the support really does come. They're always trying to reach out to the local Mexican community, but really the backbone of those organizations in San Miguel are expats.
I think in that sense, there's a lot of very similarities between San Miguel de Allende and Ajijic, with the local expats, and they just want to be helpful. There's a lot of charities going on. Anyway, this conversation was not about Ajijic. It's about San Miguel de Allende. I'm not promoting. In this podcast, guys. I'm promoting San Miguel de Allende, not Ajijic. Have you found the market shift over the past couple of years? I mean, you've been in the market since 2018, and a couple of years, like myself. How have you found it, like, demographically? Are you finding there's more Mexican buyers who are using people like yourself? Are you finding that there's more Americans? Are you finding that there's more Canadians coming down? What's the general feel of the demographic? I mean, before this whole COVID-19 thing blew everything out of the water, how was it going?
2017 and 2018 were really unusually good years for the real estate market in San Miguel, because those were the 2 years where Travel and Leisure magazine voted San Miguel the #1 city in the world. So we were inundated. I mean, like, the tourism rates were through the roof. And of course, people that get to San Miguel were loving it and wanting to buy. So we had great growth. Lots of condo development happened because of that. And now that's kind of caused the reverse problem. You know, there's too much inventory. The demographics for the past couple of years have been interesting too. When we bought there in 2016 and first got into business in 2017, I think it was, most of the folks we were working with were our age or older. I'm 62 and my husband's 74. So it was definitely retirees coming, looking for a second home or wishing to move to San Miguel full time. However, in the last probably 12 to 18 months, there's been a real influx of millennials. Very fascinating, because they can work from home on their computers, or they can work at the local coffee shops. I mean, it doesn't matter, where they are.
Yes.
You see them with their laptops, and they're bringing their families, they're bringing their small children. I have 2 girlfriends who have had their first babies in San Miguel. I mean, they're young mothers now, starting their families in a foreign country. They're from the U.S., but they're thinking, this is an exciting time in our lives. Our husbands and our, as a mom, I can work from home with my child, and we can all be in Mexico together. The cost of living is low. We can save some money. So, they're sort of seeing it as a grand adventure, early in their lives. And those of us that are expats, retirement age and older, or slightly on the brink of retirement, see it as a way to sort of transition into that final chapter, as we say, the final quarter of the football game, the last, the last 15 minutes, go to a new place and try it. But the demographics have shifted slightly. We're seeing younger buyers, a younger crowd, and we are seeing more Mexican nationals buying vacation homes in San Miguel. When we first got there, I would say it was probably about 65% U.S. buying, and the rest of it was mostly Mexicans with a few Canadians. And now it's more like 55% Americans and 45% Mexicans. Really close, with other nationalities making up that final little bit. Yes, we have some Canadians that come, but the Canadians, because the Canadian dollar is not as strong as the U.S. dollar, most Canadians are seasonal. They come and they rent, and then they go back to Canada. They come for the winter months to get out of the snow and the ice up there. So, not to say that there aren't Canadians who live full time in Mexico. I don't imply that, but the Canadian slice of the real estate market is very small in San Miguel in terms of buying homes. San Miguel is such a strong wedding venue. They come to a wedding, and then they see the city and they go, wow, this is a great city. Let's, buy a weekend home here. And it's not a bad drive. We're only like 3 hours and 15 minutes from Mexico City. So they can, drive up for the weekend. But I do think the middle class, though, is making strides in Mexico. I think they're getting better jobs. They're getting better educated. I do think the current political environment in Mexico is not helpful to them. I know that's not, politically correct to say, but I read an interesting article just last week. It was coming from, I think it was Forbes magazine. I saw it on Facebook, and it was talking about the lower classes in Mexico were who elected the current president in Mexico. Primarily, his vote came from lower class, and so he feels committed and rightly so to the people who put him in office. But the lower level income stratas in Mexico only generate about 22.5% of the gross national product in Mexico. Yeah. And so he's putting all of his eggs in that basket that is actually the smallest basket. And so the other economies generated from other sources and other demographics are sort of just getting ignored. And one of the groups that's getting a little bit ignored right now is that rising middle class in Mexico. They're being
Yeah.
a little bit hurt by the current economic policies, I think.
I love seeing people come from the US and finding a house and being happy here. I mean, I find like I'm a cog in their plan that can help them put things together.
When we were personally in the process of buying our home, we weren't thinking about starting a business down there. We decided to do the business there because we love being there so much. We thought, well, if we do some business there, we can stay longer, that kind of a thing. But we regularly told ourselves, if other people can do it, we can do it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that people could buy property. I knew that it was a successful way to do it. It was just a matter of learning and doing your due diligence and figuring out where you wanted to be and how to do it and finding a good realtor and learning the legal lay of the land and how the process is very different in Mexico from buying in the States. I can't speak to buying in London, but the fact that there's not a lender, the fact that there's not a title company, it's all done through the notario's office is just all a little strange to foreigners, at least in our experience. It seems strange to us, and we had all of that. But it's easy to learn about. It's not rocket science. Through the buying or the selling process, you really do get to know your clients. You see them when they're happy, you see them when they're frustrated, you see them when they're anxious, of emotions that they go through, whether it be buying or selling. And by the time you hold their hand through that whole process, you are friends and they do feel like family. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just say, let's put it out there, scenario. Someone's starting to research the market. They're from America, from the States, and they're just kind of like on the cusp of retiring, starting to look on YouTube for videos about Mexico. What advice would you say, if you could send it to them, the advice? What advice would you give to someone looking at Mexico?
Yeah, several things come to mind with that question. Number one, I think it's so important that they be willing to do their due diligence by doing some research online. There's so much information available that they can answer a lot of their own questions just by spending some time Googling the question. They can get that information. Second thing I would encourage people to do is to start learning Spanish now, like yesterday, start learning Spanish. It is possible to exist in Mexico without knowing a drop of Spanish, but it just greases the wheels of life. It's just the courteous thing to do. Mexican people, most of the Mexicans in San Miguel speak very fluent English, and they flip into English as soon as I try to talk to them. So I struggle to practice my poor Spanish, but speaking the Spanish would be a big advantage. And then the third thing is, and this is dependent on a couple of different factors. The third bit of advice that a lot of people get is rent first and buy later. And while that has some merit, depending on your circumstances, if you're not in a hurry or you don't need to invest to get money out of wherever you're coming from, take the time and rent. We, however, were not in that situation. When we bought, we needed to reinvest that money and we needed to do it within a certain time frame. So we were there on a mission to buy, and we knew we wanted to buy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I see a lot of people giving that, rent first. They give that advice on Facebook when somebody writes in a question about that. And sometimes it's good advice and sometimes it's not. It just depends on the circumstances. If you're very focused on why you're moving and what you need to do with your finances and the implications of all that for your future financial plans, it may be more prudent to go ahead and buy. It just depends. One size doesn't always fit everybody. So that's what comes to mind initially when you ask about advice. I think there's a lot of information out there. Good to know the language, or at least enough to get by in a socially pleasant manner. Buenos dias goes a long ways, And then decide if you want to rent or buy. That's really if you're not in a hurry to buy, by all means, rent. And maybe rent short term, maybe rent a month in various neighborhoods in the city that you're going to. So you really get a feel for the whole community, because the different neighborhoods do have a different vibe to them. So that's the way it is in San Miguel.
Is that, you know, San Miguel is that artistic hub. That's like one of the main drives for people to come to San Miguel, right? The amount of events, and of course everything's closed down at the moment, but when things are, you know, in process and things are working normally and things are open, you know, normally, there's plenty to offer from musicians, painters, artists, poets, writers.
San Miguel in the past couple of years has garnered some nice awards for their culinary efforts. The restaurant scene is very popular. I think at last count there were over 400 restaurants functioning in the city of San Miguel, and you can go to a different one every day and not get to all of them in the course of a year. Yeah, so that, I think that culinary scene also contributes to the overall artistic flavor of the city. No pun intended.
What's the altitude of San Miguel de Allende?
The elevation, I believe, is right around 6,200 feet. I don't know what the meters are offhand. As an American, I still think in a little over a mile. It's similar in elevation to Denver, Colorado in the States, which is a beautiful ski area, but San Miguel does not have snow. It does get chilly in the winter, but it's too dry for snow.
Rebecca, what do you see? What's your prediction of the rest of the year due to this whole COVID-19 craziness we're experiencing at the moment? That's something that we've never experienced before. I'm giving you plenty of time to think about it. What do you think we're going to see? I'm always interested in people's predictions.
I think the friends I have that I talk to, and myself included, my family, it seems like there's a really strong bifurcation of thought processes because of the coronavirus. People are either, oh my gosh, this is so horrible, I'm going to stay in my house for the next 6 months and not go out. Or there's the other camp of people who are like, this is not even as bad as the flu. Let's go on about our business and we'll deal with it if we get sick. You know, there's just real extremes with it. And so for the people who are in the, I'm scared, I'm going to stay home, you know, they're probably not going to get on an airplane and travel to San Miguel or to Ajijic and check out the real estate market. So I think in that aspect, the market's going to be a little bit slower for a while. However, with the US dollar being at 25 pesos to the dollar right now, with the peso weakening and the dollar gaining in strength, it's a great time to buy. And so for those people that are over here on this side saying, you know, this is a serious virus, but it's, you know, less bad than the flu, and I'm not going to let it control my life. I'm going to go ahead and live. For those people, what an opportunity. Inventory is high, demand is low. Come in, make a great deal, and get yourself a great deal, and then ride that next wave up as it comes. Real estate is always cyclical, but it's just it's a question of who's going to be braver. And I'm kind of thinking it's the people who are willing to go out and take the risk, you know, to get out and take advantage of the financial situation with the buying power now in Mexico. So I'm hoping that we'll see an improvement in the market. San Miguel had a real, and I think Mexico in general, and it's partly the crime situation, and it's partly because San Miguel has overgrown itself because of the peak in 17 and 18 with all the accolades with the travel magazines. The city got overbuilt, too many condos, and because the homes that are primarily sold a lot are generally expats, and they come down, they buy, they live there for a while, then they decide they miss their grandchildren or a spouse dies, and so they sell and they go back to the States. So there's pretty much a revolving door of homes in that, I would say, like $300 to $1 million price range. A little bit of everything, real broad price range. And so there's always going to be homes like that coming on the market. Great opportunity. And market is just flooded in San Miguel right now. Yeah, it's definitely a buyer's market right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
There's
we'll see. I
you
wish I
got to
had a
pick.
crystal ball. I wish I could make my prophecy and it'd be true. I mean, who knows, right? We'd all be much wealthier than we are if we had a crystal ball. But I'd like to think that people will be brave and take the opportunity. The reasons to come haven't changed. The weather's beautiful. The people are beautiful. The culture is gorgeous. The cost of living is low. Healthcare and dental care are great. And all the reasons that we all came to Mexico are still there. It just so happens that it's now a buyer's market, which is an extra bonus.
Yeah. So do you think if you were, say if you were talking to me and I was like, hey Rebecca, I want to buy some real estate, would you go, all right, Rich, what would you say? Would you say, hold on, let's see if the market goes down a little bit more? Or would you say, get in there and get in with an offer? I mean, this is how we think as realtors, guys. What would you do? Would you say, look, hang on, and let it dip more, let it go down more with this whole coronavirus? So there's a little bit more of a frenzy in people that want to sell.
I think it's ripe right now to go. I would encourage people to go and make an offer. Go look, make an offer. The inventory is so high. There's some beautiful out there that are just waiting for a buyer. The sellers are already in the States. They're just dying to sell. And we're seeing price reductions without any offers of, like, on an $800,000 house, it dropped to $650,000 last week. I mean, major price reductions without an offer. So that an offer could be made that's even lower, and they would just be dying to sell. It's crazy, just a crazy time. But I do think the offer is like asking someone to dance. It's definitely going to be a counter offer, and you have to kind of prime a buyer that expect some negotiation, and that's okay too. But you're already getting it at such a reduced deal because it started out here, and now it's here, and we're trying to get it here. You may have to come up just a little, but it's still, way below the original.
Did San Miguel hit that peak in about 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been downhill since then. I think some kind of adjustment in that regard. I think strategically that's going to happen as the realtors help their clients set a list price. If an American owns a home and is selling a home in Mexico, they're obviously going to be $50, but that fluctuation in the peso must be taken into consideration. It has to be. The client has to understand that we're not just going to try to sell your house to another American.
Exactly. Guess what? You do live in Mexico, and there's a huge market. Your partner, Nancy, right? She's running the business in San Miguel.
She's in San Miguel, and our other agents we have 3 other agents working in San Miguel with her. Yeah, so we've got our bases covered while we're here in Texas. But we're hoping to get back to San Miguel. We think maybe by August we'll probably close out enough that we can get back to work. Yeah.
What I mean, I don't know if I'm sure you spoke to Nancy about it. I always like to get a little bit of information on the ground. What's Nancy saying about the whole COVID-19 thing? How are people dealing with it? How are the other agents dealing with it in your office? Are people still showing houses? Are people able to show houses? Is there any kind of movement in the market at the moment?
Very limited right now. This past week, we're members of a professional realtor organization called AMPI. We've been getting the presentations on a weekly basis. AMPI has not been meeting with their regular Wednesday morning meetings. They've gone to a Zoom format, where they're meeting online. And this past week, there was only one home under contract and only one closing. And normally we have 5 to 10 of each. So, I mean, the market's really slow right now.
In your office?
All the AMPI offices. I mean, out of the whole AMPI organization of like 80 some odd realtors, there was one closing and one new home under contract.
Wow, okay.
The notario offices are pretty much shut down right now. So, I mean, it's really hard to do business when paperwork can't get done. Our local AMPI organization of professional realtors one of the requirements is if you're going to be a member of AMPI, you have to participate in the MLS. So they technically, they're supposed to put their listings in MLS. That doesn't always happen. We know that to be a fact, but technically it's supposed to happen. But then there's a huge number of people doing real estate in San Miguel who aren't even affiliated with AMPI. So that's just kind of the old word of mouth, put a sign on the building and hope somebody calls, so who knows what the percentage is.
So how many offices, let me just ask, how many offices are there, how many offices and how many, around, how many agents are there, brokerages, yeah?
We have I know our normal Wednesday meetings run about 60 to 65, but I think we've probably got 80 to 90 realtors in AMPI. Some name brands that, expats recognize. We have a Sotheby's, we have a Christie's, we have a Remax, we have some local ones that do a lot of business.
This has been fantastic. I mean, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation with you, Rebecca. I could talk for another hour. It really is.
Let's just do it again sometime, okay?
How about this? How about when things are kind of normalizing themselves in the next couple of months, hopefully, then, how about I come down to San Miguel de Allende when you're there, and you can take me around some of your listings. I bring my camera, I bring the equipment, and I can spread some of your love to the people on my platform.
And then I'll come to Ajijic and you can show us around, and we'll do that too.
It's a date. It's been made. It's been made. But thank you so much, Rebecca. You take good care of yourselves. Take good care of, and I will see you hopefully in the near future in San Miguel de Allende. By the way, guys, if you want any information, if you need help looking for real estate in the area of San Miguel de Allende, I will leave all of Rebecca's contact details down below, website, email, stuff like that. Telephone number, is that all right, Rebecca? I'll leave everything down below. Contact her, feel free to contact her directly, guys. Tell her that you listened to the podcast or whatever, and you're in safe hands with Rebecca. Make sure that if you're interested in San Miguel, make sure that you contact Rebecca.
Thank you, Rich.